So we'll kick in with the main agenda that we were here for. So I would like to welcome Mr. Vishwananda Raju, who is going to be the moderator for this session. To give a brief introduction about him, he is a global head of talent acquisition at Axiscades in Bangalore. He's a seasoned talent acquisition professional with over 17 years of experience in managing talent acquisition in product development and investment banking captive organizations. He comes with a lot of awards and achievements during his professional career, some of them being he was awarded for outstanding contribution in business engineering from Deutsche Bank, Train and Hire Program Excellence Award from Deutsche Bank, Honeywell Technology Solutions Bravo Award for Boundary-Less Behavior, Fast Track Hiring Program Honeywell Technology Solutions, awarded twice for being top 5% talent, again from Honeywell Technology Solutions. We welcome you, Mr. Vishwananda Raju. Hope this session is very enriching for all the HR professionals and participants out here. Over to you, sir.
Okay, so thanks. That was a good introduction, Aneri. I'm sure I'm pretty excited to be part of this session. And the best part is we have almost 4 gentlemen and gentlewomen in this part of this session. And all of these people bring in a lot of perspective of HR and more specifically into talent acquisition, talent practices, right? So I'm pretty excited about it. So let's kick off. So we will start with our panel introduction. So when I introduce somebody, if you can just raise your hand, it will be great. So let's start with Aditya. Aditya has been a good friend of mine almost like 10 years now. Comes with around 19 years of experience, currently works with Informatica as head of TA. Pretty known in the industry in terms of technology and product hiring, and has done a lot of transformational work in HR and talent acquisition. So Aditya. Then we have Santosh. Santosh heads HR for Indus, one of the youngest in this group, while I'm not telling you guys my age. Right, so he's the youngest in this panel, so we would look at a lot of inputs from him. Does a lot of work in change management, organization structure, and one of the things that he always does is volunteering. And let's see if we can take his singing talent today into this webinar, right? So we also have Divya, who manages HR for Landis, and then Raj, who is the GM HR for TCS, right? So if you, all of you can just wave your hands once again, so that everyone, okay. So, okay, let's start with, I think Santosh. I think Santosh would want to kind of ask you, right? So the theme of this session is pretty simple. We are looking at changing roles of HR in upskilling and employees, and handling top talent and building future pipeline. I think I would have some, 6-8 questions that I would want to ask. Those will be revolving on this topic, and obviously aligning talent to the achieve business objectives is a basic premise of the discussion that we are doing. So in new generation HR model, Santosh, I think we as a HR person wear multiple hats, right? Being a business partner, L&D manager, employee coach, performance manager, and all that. And I'm sure in the current scheme of things, we are also playing a lot of roles in terms of partnering the business kind of. Can you throw some light on, how do we still do all these things and still manage the business goals, Santosh, if you can pick it up?
Thank you, Vishwananda, asking the questions. It's a very, very interesting question. And, before I would start my, the journey which I have traveled so far for 13 years into the different industry. Hope I'm audible, right? Let me check my voice. Yes, thank you very much. So 13 years of diverse experience into manufacturing, and also in manufacturing, chemicals, and then paper industry. So different manufacturing setup I have worked. And other than that, telecom and banking for precisely for a couple of years. So a very interesting, story is that when I started as a management trainee way back in 2007, there were a lot of questions on HR, as usually it happens that existence and roles and all that stuff happens everywhere while I was passing out from the college. So before getting into my experience, I would like to throw some lights on the, basically we all are aware that David Ulrich, and in 2001, he wrote a book called Human Resource Champions. So, and that Human Resource Champions basically talks about the role identification, exactly how many roles are there. So he defined, there were four roles of HR, and all the roles were, very much evolving those days. And before that, we were not pretty sure about the roles. Most of the time, HR used to spend their time in the, administrative activity, so-called the personal management. And this model basically, a little bit talk about this model, and then I will proceed to my experience journey which I have traveled. So this model is having something like, 2x2 matrix, or we can call it quadrant. So there are four quadrants, and roles are divided something like this. Strategic partner, then we have change agent, employee champion, and then the last one is administrative expert. So how 2x2 matrix was evolved, something like day-to-day operations, the operations focus into the business side, and then the future and the strategic arena of HR. So all these people and processes both were these all put together, and then all the roles were defined. These four roles were defined. we have we all know that we have multiple roles, we have multiple activities HR does, and all are divided into these four segments. uh, and in fact, since he's the human resource management guru, I personally feel I am very much inspired by the research he has done. After that, HR competencies came into picture. So let me talk about how my role proceeded further, and what I started, and then what I did, what I'm doing right now. So it is very important to I would like to love to share with you all. I started journey with the, of course, the way HR does. I passed out from IFI Hyderabad, IBS Hyderabad, and then I started my role with the administrative job. I was basically, responsible for the entire, filing, personal filing, then the TA support to the TA, support to the L&D, and a lot many more things like, ensuring the compliance of HR, which is happening over there. All activities of HR compliance related. Fortunately, since I was a part of the management trainee, and my company, picked me up from the campus. So I was given, got the opportunity to work on the transformation project, change projects, and that was like something like administrative side to moving to the, strategic HR and change agent, mix of both. So I was a part of, job analysis and evaluation exercise, then developing the, performance tool document, and digitization of the entire HR HR piece, HR document, HR processes for the organization, and then HRMS, end-to-end HRMS rollout, which we used to happen to make our HR practices smooth across the organizations. And I'm talking about right now telecom. So that was the journey of telecom. And learning was that, though I was handling the administrative part mostly, and then I was given this particular piece, so immense learning was there. I was driving the entire performance management from the HRMS side, as well as I was a single point of contact for those things. Then setting up the how to set the performance management, defining it, and those things I have done. Then moving to the next, wherein I was, as you mentioned, Vishwananda, yeah, that talent acquisition. Then I was given a role of in one of the organization, in one of the place where I was supposed to set up the entire circle role. So I was hired almost roughly around hundreds of human resources, and I personally believe that TA has a major role of HR. Hiring is one of the futuristic agenda, one of the strategic agenda of any human resource, because you are bringing talent to the organization, and you are ensuring the success of the organizations. So therefore, something like recruiting, onboarding, inducting them, giving them the platform to perform, helping them in terms of their pulling out the performance, whatever was expected. So those things I did. And then there was a employee talent management piece of as a role part, and in that we were supposed to do the hypot identification, succession planning, and helping them in terms of developing their IDPs, individual development plan. So those are all things I was exposed to. Moving to the next, this organization I came, that was a completely, first generation organization. And in the first generation organizations, it was purely, it's a personal management only. HR was completely missing. Good part was that my CEO has a backup. So my CEO, he was very, very interesting, and he was treating me like not in fact, business partner, or only the HR guy. He treated me as a whole and soul part of the business, and that gave me the confidence and entire change management experiences which I have spoken about, or which is there in my profile, that I tried out there. Organization design, organization restructuring, then assessment of the people, fitment of the people again in the right roles based on their competencies, their skill, competencies and knowledge. And then we did that, revamped entire organization, brought in the performance management first time in that organization. I would not like to name the organization certainly, because some of my colleagues, some of my fellow HRs over here also, and they are very much connected to the HR success. But whatever I have done there, I still feel proud, whatever I have done there. So that comes out automatically. CEO is there, still he is there. When I was leaving, and he requested me to stay back, but somehow, your learning passion goes on, and you move one place to another place in the hunt of your passion, right? So moving to the next organization, there also,
so Santosh,
something
I think
like
we will hold on. I think we are running out of time. So I know that you spoke about change management and all that stuff. So we'll just move on to Aditya. So Aditya, now I think
Sure.
what's happening is in the current scheme of things, virtual is now stroke new real, right? Everything is happening virtually, right? Right from assessment, onboarding, and everything, right? And I'm sure you might had some initial hiccups kind of a thing, but what I come to know about the way Informatica had transformed this journey, today a lot of people talk about the best practices and all that. Would you want to kind of walk us through this journey? How did you traverse, Aditya?
Yeah, thanks, thanks Vish, and welcome everybody on a Saturday afternoon. I'm sure you're eating into your lunchtime at this moment. Yeah, so coming back to the way technology has evolved. First let me quote, when I quote this law in a lot of places called the Martech's law, which basically talks about technology adoption vis-a-vis human beings, organizations adoption. So the curve, there's a big differential between the way the technology is moving and the way the adoption is. Good or bad thing about the COVID is the adoption has certainly become improved a lot. So the biggest and the prime example is right now we are all sitting virtual as we speak, right? Otherwise we would have met in a hotel or somewhere else where we would have done the webinar at this moment of time. So the technology adoption is very critical. Yes, initially every organization and everybody went through hiccups. The good thing is all of us are so well networked that we speak to each other and learn. I think that cohesiveness has come up in the due course of time, where all of us in the HR fraternity is connecting with each other. So that is one thing which is happening. Now, if you look at talent acquisition as a space, the things which have evolved because of COVID and few other things is you look at sourcing. Sourcing, while everything was virtual, you do it from a laptop and everything else. The training, the webinar on learning about technology have sprung up very extensively. You have a lot of people who do webinars on specific techniques on sourcing, which has come up very extensively. JDs have evolved from there to having more virtual JDs, which have come up as a play, because remember the attention span of anybody is not less than about 30%, 30 seconds or something. So the virtual JD is something which has covered extensively. Talent attraction has moved from the face-to-face to looking at webinars. One is this, as we speak. There are virtual meetups, which are happening. Earlier, the meetups used to happen more physical and at some companies' locations. They've become more virtual in nature. You have more speakers speak about their organization, speak about the relevant topics, in a way branding their own organization, right? That's also which is coming up. The interviews have moved to a two-way process, more virtual. That means we have got into a phase where you will have to train your interviewer, and you'll be surprised how to take virtual interview as a two-way process. At the same time, you need to also train the candidate to make sure that he or she is trained on doing virtual interviews. Post offer connects have become virtual. Basically, I'll give you an example. For anybody who's been offered, we base a video goes to the future hire from the hiring manager and the team, welcoming them to the organization, gives a sense of belief and sense of ownership to them. And the biggest part is onboarding, right? A lot of companies have moved to a virtual onboarding space where you onboard the individual by sending them the laptop, and they virtually, get all the sessions done at a period of time. A lot of companies are learning. They are moving instead of doing it in one day, but then spreading it out because it becomes too taxing. Remember, for a fact, there's a lot of eye time on the laptop, which is not too great, right? That's the direction which is moving in. A lot of the sessions from the leadership is happening. You see over communication happening, which is very critical. You have a lot of leaders coming in telling about their story. It's more storytelling than anything else. The sessions have become far more engaging individually, because now we are in a situation where everybody is remote, to a situation where it was semi-remote and not, right? Today everybody is remote, so the sessions have become far more remote. So the adoption has, really moved in that direction. So back to you, Vish.
Okay, so I think I picked up the word Martik's law. I think that is something that I would want to read, right? So let's go to Divya, right? I think Divya, if you really see today, the URL, the new URL, not the old URL, the unlearning, relearning part of the URL has become a new norm. And what I'm also seeing that growth-oriented companies are actually adopting a new way of upskilling employees and all that. And you as HR person in the organization, and you also see that the employee morale is low because of various external factors that we are going through. But they also need to be upskilled for the new expectation that you have on the new projects, right? So can you just throw some light on how did you do this kind of a thing in your company, and obviously how did it pan out to kind of a thing?
Yeah, sure. So thank you, and thanks a lot for having me. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you and your family are keeping safe in times like these. So interesting question. So I look at it, learning, unlearning, or upskilling as a very natural process, and it takes me back to something which Darwin probably said many years back, that it is very closely related to theory of evolution, and survival of the fittest. So it is very, very important that while it is onus of individuals to continue to see that how they can learn and upskill, but organizations also have to play a very, very critical part. And I think I'm very, very happy and proud to say that I'm part of the organization which is 126 years old. So we've survived many, many decades, many recessions, downtimes and uptimes, and we are here. We're market leaders. We typically manufacture smart meters for industrial and residential purposes. Just to give a little background of what we do. And in Noida, we have the biggest R&D center. I think the biggest R&D center for Landis+Gyr is out of Noida. So I think how we look at it is primarily from 2-3 perspectives. One is from a cultural context, that learning, how do we make Landis, as a learning organization, where people like to think or come with an approach of blue sky thinking. And what is a blue sky thinking? It is something which says that, your learning has no limit. We don't want people to, just think that, oh, AI is the new technology or cloud is the new technology, so everybody wants to do that. We say, no, domain knowledge is what is important. That's what is going to help you go deeper into your domain, and that's what is going to make you very, very irreplaceable or very, very important part of the organization. So I think the whole focus is on, take risk, fail. It's okay to fail, but continue to take risk, challenge the status quo, look beyond your silos. If you're a developer, you don't really nearly have to just do your line of coding, see what the testing person does, understand what the architecture of the product is like, so that's from a cultural part which we take care, and we continue to challenge people to go beyond, put discretionary efforts to up their learning ability and learning skill. From a very, very learning perspective, what we do is that we follow 70-20-10 model, which most of the organizations do, I think. where 70% of your trainings and learnings happen through online, while you're on the job and you're interacting with people. So I think creating those forums, knowledge sharing forums, where we get a chance to know more than what Get is doing, know our customers, know different product lines, know what people in different geographies are doing. I think that is very, very important part. Apart from that, I think a lot of like other organizations, collaborative tools are being used, online platforms to provide training, which people can do what they based on their individual needs. I think one interesting thing which we also do is that we very much specialize or cater the training needs to individual aspirations and needs. So it's very, very close to IDP. If you have common and generic programs, I think not many two people will be invested. They will just go because it's kind of an important thing to do or a mandate to do. But there is a very close linkage with IDP to see that how this training program is going to help me as an individual. And for me, I think our focus, apart from the technical skill, we continue to say that human skills will remain very, very critical. And let's not forget that how important skills like empathy, compassion, integrity, and things like that are. So I think that's how we're taking care in a way manner on our learning and our upskilling of our employees.
Yeah, thanks very much, Divya. I think you hit the nail on the nail. So I think that's an important point that you mentioned. I like that 70-20-10 rule. While it is pretty old, or maybe that is what's happening in most of the companies, but I think not many people are using it the way you guys are using it, and thanks for that. So let's shift gears to Raj. Raj, I think you come with enormous number of experience that you have got through, and in today's world, artificial intelligence and AI, or maybe we talk about automation, is playing a big role, right? While this is little in a very early stage, and I am seeing that some companies have got the solution the way they are kind of projecting, right? So can you take maybe a few minutes and tell your views on this, the way AI is kind of looking at from a HR or TA standpoint?
Thanks, Vishwa. In my view, this is nothing new. For the last few years, we are talking about social mobility, cloud analytics, getting deeper and deeper. And in today's context, it is getting commoditized. So, and post it is no more a choice. So you have to adopt some of these in your organizations. Otherwise, you will find it difficult to exist. So people are already talking about, man to machine ratio. They are talking about, outcome-based models. So there is a tremendous shift happening. Even I am wondering, during my lifetime, if I would be asked to hire a robot instead of a human being. Now, in this context, when I look at future forward, it's not just related to talent acquisition function, but in its entirety, future of work and workplaces is shifting big time. There's a mammoth shift happening. Now, the questions that are being asked is more about, will offices exist? And, the office design, will the office design change? So some of those deliberations are happening because we had offices primarily for, to enhance collaboration among people. We want to engage them. Now, challenge in front of CHROs is how do we replicate the same experience of engagement, camaraderie, collaboration that we used to provide in office environment in virtual form. So that's one major challenge that I see, post this COVID situation, which is at the forefront of leadership mindset. Number two, I see a huge shift, and it's mammoth when it comes to learning industry. So learning industry is not only in corporate, but as a part of education world. They, in my view, will achieve what they could have achieved in the next 20 years. They're going to achieve that in next 1 year. Now, the opportunity they have got now to, grow by leaps and bounds, and thanks to EdTech, which was already making a stride. and making routes for the last few years. So if I see, the student community, the teaching community, they were not used to this online mechanism of education. Even corporate also, we were pushing it. So now this is becoming slowly and steadily new normal. So as I said, one future of work in workplaces is going through a major change. Education and learning industry is going through a mammoth shift. Third biggest thing that I see from a larger trend perspective is this gig economy. So the gig economy is going to take center stage. Government all over the world, particularly in the developing world, are going to frame some rules, regulation, because the governance regulation around gig is very at a very tardy stage when it comes to developing world. So I sense that government across the developing world will take note of it. As far as AI in recruitment is concerned, majority of the organization, progressive organization, has already embedded it into their talent acquisition mechanism, whether it is from interviewing skills or psychometric testing, etc. So different organization would be at different stages. So these are a few of my initial thoughts, Vishwa.
Okay. I think you mentioned that future of work and workplace both are getting changed. I think that's a cue that I'm taking. So Santosh, when we spoke to you, I think you were mentioning something on talent management, right?
Yes.
And we all know what the top talent can do to a company, like any company, right? And I would want to throw some light on hiring top talent and also retaining the existing top talent, which is more important for me. And what has been your experience in that area? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Let me tell you precisely, what we do with the talent management. We have a talent board, and basically we focus on retention. Of course, the hypot is identified there, and then there is a, based on the assessment which we have, and we have an exclusive individual development plan in place, right? And then we have mentoring sessions. There are based on the IDPs, whatever the training programs are identified. So we try to cover those, and then there is a back to school policy, business school policy, to upgrade their futuristic role, whatever role is identified for them, a critical role in fact. So for that, what is the gaps are identified, and then we send them to the business school to acquire those skills. Apart from that, we have a policy in place wherein challenging projects like quality projects, then process excellence projects, we assign them, and those have a period 6 months, 3 to 6 months, and we assess them how they have, whether they have done fairly or not. And then based on that, there is a fast track futuristic role which is already identified. We assess and put them to those roles. So that is how this is basically the retention tools for our hypot for our talent. Moving to the next part of your question, which is in fact hiring. So hiring the talent. So basically what we do is when we hire the new of course hiring the talent from the market, and then put them under these hypot these talent the talent, so that they will learn from them how they have become the brand ambassador for us, the hypot talent. So what they do is they do the shadowing buddy program is initiated. Then there is a mentee mentor program for these new hires. Specifically, we have fixed up some levels to that, like manager and above. So those are, and they are since shadowing by the top talent of ours. So there is a mix and match, they are learning from them and then moving ahead, learning in terms of the, policies, in terms of the aspiration also. Early on, they got the aspiration in them, and therefore, there is a bridge and there is a connect is created with the talent, hyper talent and the new hire. So that is how we run the program. And let me tell you only that we have able to attain our 100%. 100% our retention of the top talent has remained so far, and the new joiner, those who are joining, they aspire to become a part of the talent group. So over to you, Vishwas. That's the precise answer which I thought to.
Santosh, I think I like the point of putting these new guys into the talent potential high pods so that they understand the ecosystem pretty well, right? And
Yes.
as a company that you would want to create a hyper organization, right? So let me now put Aditya on spot. Aditya, what's happening today is that the business expectations are changing. Maybe 5-10 years back it was always about, okay, how can you hire these people, kind of a thing, right? Now today's world, the business expectation is, can you build a future talent for me where I'm ready to kind of hire people from that lot, or maybe how can you build talent, how can you create that ecosystem for me so that I can be more agile in the way that I can look at things. So Aditya, your
Yeah,
thoughts?
thanks, Vish. So basically, looking at building future pipeline, right? It has to be a strategic decision, Vish, because first you need to see which direction the organization is growing, right? We talk about looking at future skills, right? It's very important for people to in talent acquisition to know what are the future skills which your organization will be hiring at a period of time, right? How do you start pipelining those people? What and also one is the future skills, because that's the kind of work which might come in the future. Secondly is the current skills, what they will upgrade into something else, right? Are these current base skills will they move into some other direction at a period of time? That's another story. Also to look at how do you attract the right talent, right? Predominantly it's been a push strategy, right? You put in the job position, people will go ahead and apply for those jobs, and that's the direction which a lot of organization and all of us do take in this period of time. But if for futuristic pipelining standpoint, it has to be more of a pull strategy where you start pipelining for the future, right? That is one. Having the right talent, right? Now you break this down into two parts. One is your internal employees, where you basically identify the people inside the organization who would be your future talent and also future leaders in period of time, right? How do you start pipelining those people at a period of time? Secondly is looking at talent pool, which is external, right? How do you identify those, right? One is you go to a lot of these networking events, and which we all of us do as TA leaders, where we identify, speak to some of the SMEs in the area which we want, which we may not have a position now, but that this is the direction the organization is going to go grow in, right? How do you get into that area? How do you get into specifically into those particular niche groups, and how do you make sure that you make a presence in those areas is get into those areas, very important. Have dedicated recruiting campaigns specifically to the areas which you want to grow in, so that you know where the talent pool is riding, because you need to have a very sniper approach when it comes to talent, right? As good as investing in your own talent, right? The future generation, right? Most of the Gen Z, which is coming from colleges, the interns and everything, will be another area which you need to see how do we leverage that. How do you leverage your current existing contacts to build upon those to get your future pipeline, right? How do you invest in your current teams, current people to invest, who look at their previous organization to see, hey, these are the top talent from my old organization. How do we develop that? Then the second part is obviously developing them, and also from a recruiting angle, it's about how do you engage with this talent, right? You don't have anything right now for them, but how do you engage, how do you connect, how do you speak to them? It plays a very, very important part, and all of this comes into some part into candidate experience, right? It's the experience which you give the individual who get interviewed by you or is a part of the process. What's the after effects of the process plays a very, very important part in a pipe for a future pipelining perspective. Vish, back to you, Vish.
Okay, I think I like the point that investing in your own talent is important while you are also looking at external. And you mentioned a point about investing in your own talent, who is also hiring these kind of people from a sniper approach. I think that's the 2 points that I took it from your this thing, Aditya. So now I would want to ask something to Divya. So today, HR analytics and HR intelligence is taking the center stage, right? And there's a lot of data, there's a lot of analysis which is done, and then there are decisions which are made based on that. So can you throw some light on how analytics is used, and then how you guys are actually managing that, and how through the outcomes, how are you able to manage the business expectations, Divya?
Sure. In very simple terms, how I look at analytics is that, anything which is leading to actionable inferences is what analytics is. So while it is a science of, gathering, organizing, and analyzing the data, and our journey towards HR analytics has only recently started, in the last few years. But I think I have seen a tremendous change when we started looking, at data in a very, very different way. So HR is sitting on heaps and heaps of data, and if you don't use the data, if you're not able to make out the right inferences from what you're sitting in, you are not probably being the right strategic partner to the business and enabling them, giving information in a way which is going to either fast track them or even in some cases course correct if that is required. I'll give you two examples how it has helped us in recruitment as well as in talent management. So we do not have the most fancy tools yet to do the HR analytics, but we've over the last few years slowly started thinking differently and seeing that how do we look at data in various angles, aspects, and again, back to basics and start from there. Our hiring, when we use the same, when we analyze the data during recruitment, we realize that by looking at our past data, we are able to future predict. So our cycle time to hire has been, slashed by about 25% because we're still not there with respect to the tools per se. But we are able to make better choices based on what the historical data is. We are able to derive the best fit. Last 2 year hiring, I think our top raters have been people who've joined in the last 2 years. In spite that the domain knowledge which is required to do the job, if you have that, it helps you to do that. But so which means that by actually tapping that data, we are able to have the right set of people join the organization. Also, we are able to build a large pipeline with the help of HR analytics. We are able to understand, which particular, for a particular position, what's the demographics we'd like to target. Will it take time to build the pipeline for a particular position? So we start working on it way before that. And, so from that perspective, it has helped us in recruitment per se, plus our ability to show data to business from various angles, the number of people we're able to hire from product organizations to the demographics to the performance and things like that. From a retention perspective, I think started with basics by saying that why people are leaving, what are the reasons, and then deep diving, is there any trends which are emerging with respect to certain age groups, certain demographics, certain performance ratings, certain projects, and then deep diving into each one of them to have certain interventions catered to those set of people to address that. So very happy to share in the last 2-3 years, our attrition percentage has also slashed down by over 45% by using these tools and mechanisms. So I think we are experiencing monumental changes in the HR landscape, and organizations are realizing that they need to embrace data-driven culture to compete with others and stay on top. Over to you.
Okay, so I think that actually takes me to the last question. Raj, this is a very, very important question according to me. I'm sure a lot of students are glued into this webinar, and I'm sure they have a lot of questions. So on their behalf, I would want to ask, okay, what are your key suggestions that you would want to give to the students in the pandemic and then the employment kind of situation is happening? So what are the 2-4 things that you would want to share so that they feel happy about or see a positive sun on the other side?
I think in my view, I'll share my experience when I was young, very young, way back in 2000. I put this question to our president in GE and asked him, what do you need to be a successful leader? And he said, Raj, there are 3 things. Number 1, you must have clarity of thought. Number 2, you should have an ability to articulate that thought. And third, wherewithal to execute that. So clarity of thought, ability to articulate that thought, and wherewithal to execute that. So that's number one. Number two, in my GE experience early on, I learned if you want to become a leader, you should focus on 3 areas. And in the middle comes the values. So number one is business acumen. Now, when I say business acumen, this is all about your ability to anticipate global trends. Know the language of business, that is finance, which essentially means P&L understanding, commercial savviness, pricing ability. So number two is change management skills. How do you take all the stakeholders along? Whichever methodology you use, TQM, Six Sigma, whatever way. So change management is number 2 focus. And third is your domain. For us, like for me, HR is my domain. So your domain should be number 3 priority. So first is business acumen. Second is change management ability. Third is domain. And in the middle is your value system. And value system, when I say, you can have your own 4-5 design principle that how will you conduct your life or your professional life as you go along. Number 3, which got ingrained at the beginning of my career itself, focus on capability building. So across the world, companies have different layers, but it is demarcated in 3 areas. Number 1 is your staff, second is middle management, and third is top management. And after that, you have got few guys who would be in the strategic management, very few. And we in HR will create multiple layers within, depending on the country that we are operating in, 2-3 layers in staff, 2-3 layers in the middle, and 2-3 layers in the top management. And on an average, roughly 10 levels exist in the organization. Now, instead of focusing on that growth or getting conditioned to that, focus on developing those skills that are needed for those levels. So, for example, if I'm in staff, I should focus on what are the top 10, 12 attributes that I need for middle management. If I'm in middle management, I need to think about what are the top 10 to 12 attributes that are needed for the top level. Because if I'm hiring for, let's say, vice president for a large business, I'm least bothered about their, MS skills. I'm more bothered about their business acumen, their ability to deal with ambiguity, positivity in chaos, nose for talent, coaching and mentoring ability to mass motivate, etc. So figure those out and just, mark yourself as to where do you exist on those skills and build it. So 3 things I have talked about, as I said, clarity of thought, ability to articulate that thought and wherewithal to execute that. Second is focus on capability building. And third, this model that I have shared with you. Number 1, focus on business acumen. Second, on change management ability. Third is domain, and the middle values. So these are few of my thoughts.
Thanks. I think makes a lot of this thing, and I'm sure some students have got the cue about it. So Aditya, I think we'll start the questions from the audience. The first question is to you, Aditya. Workplace is undergoing a dramatic transformation, and interestingly, we could have been a reality of future. Has it become present?
Yeah. Interestingly, funnily, and this is like more on workforce of the future, and I just put up one of the YouTube videos on my LinkedIn today. So yes, it is. As I said in my starting comments, right? We are forced into adopting for technology at this period of time, right? What has changed? You look at your workplace, your workforce, those triple W's, what I refer to. They've all evolved, right? Your workforce in due course of time will be more older and ethically and racially more diverse. That's what their workforce is now evolving it to be. Your life expectancy has gone up, right? Average age in due course of time for a male will be about 74 and women will be 77. We have multi-generation workforce which is coming to play. Gen Z being your nearest entrant in the workforce, right? free agents, gig economy, and I think Raj spoke about it. That's what is coming up by virtue of all of these situations. The good and the bad part is virtual workforce, which a lot of us were dreading, has come through now. We have realized the fact that a lot of work can be done from home instead of physically being there in office. We are realizing that fact, at least in technology, it is happening. What is also interesting, and which I've been trying to build a study upon, is you will see a lot of jobs which will come up in future, which will be location agnostic, of saying that, hey, I need to get that work done. You can do it from anywhere in India, right? Because that may not require you to be a part of a team, but you basically individually do that work. You will also see an evolution of where the older workforce, which is basically called the perennials, will continue to work for a period of time. There's a concept called leaning out, which basically says phased out recruiting, phased out retirement. Basically, it says that, hey, instead of working 8 hours, why don't you still work? Please work with us for another 4 hours for those couple of years. So there's less pressure on you as an individual, but then I don't lose the talent, the brain talent, which I could have lost at that period of time. That's the one. Also see a big shift. Getting cities, which is about 5% of the world population. Apparently, by 2035, we'll have about 50 mega cities. And the last is also the shift from developing to developed. Which have a problem of aging population, where they will, in due course of time, have more flexible immigration policy as compared to an Africa, where basically, if you look at the working population, which is about 57%, will go higher to make sure that enough infrastructure for them. There's a push out, the more of a pull out from both the angles. So there would be change, and the situation has put us in that situation.
Okay. Okay, I think that's a good perspective. So Raj, this is for you. According to you, how do we redeploy assets and human capital and create value?
I was just looking at chat. This question has been put up by Rashmi.
Yeah.
So I think Rashmi could answer it better than me, but I will just, Rashmi, glad to see you there after a long time. And, it's something collective leadership and organizations are struggling at that from the prism of HR. I see our role is shifting big time, and I see it in the context of 3 C's. So I see role of HR shifting and as we go along. One is of conscious keeper of the organization. Second is custodian, and third, which would be most important, of role of a consultant. So consultant, custodian, and conscious keeper. As a consultant, our job would be to help build a leadership, act as a facilitator, and ensure that whatever we are doing in HR space, from engagement, from retention, and other standpoint, we facilitate managers are able to do it. When I say conscious keeper, that's where your value and culture come into play. And when I say custodian, your policies, your compliances, and everything come into play. So this is how I see that shift is happening from a HR spectrum standpoint. Vishwa. Thanks.
Okay. So I don't have many questions from the chat, but I have a question to any of you can answer. I recently heard Google CEO saying that today, I think the situation is that we can hire people from anywhere and they can work from anywhere for a project which is anywhere. So I'm sure he would have thought about so many things before doing that. But do you think that is something that is doable in the current context of legal law and all those international borders and all that stuff? This is a very high level question, but I just wanted your thoughts. Maybe you guys can answer.
Should I answer this?
Yeah, anyone.
Yeah, Raj, you can go ahead and then I'll add on.
Okay. I think, first of all, I was talking to, when I was in London, so I was somebody was presenting it to me about 21st century systems and processes. And my question was, we cannot deploy 21st century system with 20th century mindset. Now, if you see the world, the globe, from the global perspective, we were saying globalization for the last 3-4 decades. That's where the world politics was and economics was moving into. But if you see in the last 5 to 7 years or roughly 10 years, there is a shift wherein we are talking about becoming more local. Right-wing parties are taking a center stage. Grexit, and some of the stuff that we have heard, and some of the policies being pursued by number one economy in the world, America, is also, kind of restricting that globalization. So I think we are entering into a new world. What you said, a CEO of a large company said, this is a new reality. How those contracts will be built, how that flow in terms of their compensation will happen, this is something that needs to be worked out. If you see, just I think last week there was some restriction announced on some visas by American government. Now, amidst all that, how will you do that? And while doing so, how do you ensure that you remain compliant from GDPR standpoint? Europe is bringing in new rules and regulations. New rules and regulations are coming from America. So they need to take care of those compliance related nuances, which will differ from country to country. Aditya, you may like to add.
Yeah, thanks. Let me just look at from, and I brought it up, I think one of my points initially was location agnostic jobs, right? Predominantly speaks into that, the question what Vish basically asked about, right? I will just break it down to 3 critical parts from my understanding, right? Why do we want to do this, right? Any company, right? Why won't we want to do this? It gives you a foot in the future because your talent pool becomes far bigger, right? Your cost to serve from a tiering standpoint from cities is far more cheaper, right? Secondly, you look at untapped talent who wouldn't have moved, that talent wouldn't have moved to the location where you would have got jobs, right? You retain your current set of employees who may want to work from home or work from their own home location, right? It becomes easier for them. From an organization standpoint, what do? You basically save money on infrastructure, you save money on water, food, everything else. If you look at job sites, if you open any of the job sites, there are a huge talent pool and if you log in as an employer, there is a huge talent pool which has opted in for work from home. So that's the option which is the candidate has moved, but we as employer need to move, right? Even from a BCP standpoint, right? It gives you an off-location BCP for the kind of work which you do, right? From a cost to serve also, imagine you pay a lot of money for people to relocate. You will save that money, right? You will save the money from facility, utility, transport, everything else. What is the cost incurred is maybe the laptop, the internet, right? Maybe the ergonomics for the individual to work upon. What you need is basically a sponsor in your organization who would believe in this and create those jobs, but you need to find specifically jobs which has no impact from a physical presence being, or they might be global in nature. So you need to identify those roles, but it is possible, Vish. And I feel that's the direction that we should.
I would just like to add here, when you look country specific, what Aditya is saying works. But let's say the work is originating in Paris, and I'm a Paris-based company. Can I get it done from Uganda or any other place? Now, will the custom duties like we have on goods will start on service also. I think some of those challenges will confront some of these, leaders, political leaders in times to come.
Yeah.
But within country, I think that would be more, if that answer needs to be given in a our country context, it doesn't make a difference whether you work from, Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore or any other city, as long as you are connected, particularly in service industry. Challenges of manufacturing and other ancillary industries would be very different. So what Aditya says, I completely agree. In the context of individual country, it's easy to do, and we should do it.
Yeah. So this is for Santosh and Divya. Can you please tell us your views on future jobs in HR domain? And also they are seeing that there's a lull in terms of the opportunities coming up, right? So Santosh, Divya, your views.
Yeah, Divya, will you take up or should I take up?
Take it up, take it up.
Yeah, and then maybe you can add further, right? So very, very interesting questions. If you ask me honestly, everybody is thinking in those directions right now, right? But what I feel personally, the business will pick up. It's a temporary phenomena. What COVID is because of COVID, whatever has happened, right? So the workplace, the way it is working right now, let me tell you the reality, couple of months back, 4-5 months back, when I went back and I asked my CHRO, so can we introduce work from home as a policy? And probably that will give us a great, employee engagement sort of a thing, right? So, and we regularly participate in Gallup survey. So that will be a motivation factor for all the employees. So then, answer was very different and weird. And Raj is, laughing, and maybe he must be understanding I'm not talking about IT. I'm talking about different industries. If you talk about the manufacturing setup, telecom, and manufacturing is quite different. If you go back and tell them work from home, I'm sure that most of us know what could be the answer. So per se that, whatever you see, in terms of fresher hiring, now coming to the question, what the question is asked, everything will be go up. Business is not winding up. Let me tell you, per se telecom, though telecom has shrunk in terms of business operations, but there are a lot of recruitment which is going to happen in future. There are a lot of other avenues which are going to come up. If you talk about technology industry, that will come up like anything. So if some jobs are HR jobs will remain there. If some jobs are getting foregone, which are cutting across, there are newer sort of jobs which are coming up. Let me tell you, HR, currently we are working from home. We are doing a lot of employee engagement, virtual employee engagement. Recruitment is happening through Skype or maybe Zoom. But there are few jobs in HR like counseling, performance coach, consulting. Raj already mentioned in his initial talk. Counseling, performance coach. These things are going to be the major push for the industry. And let me tell you, though operational jobs might outsource in HR, but some of these elements which I spoke about, performance coaching, counseling, mental health, employee engagement will have to go far from the cake cutting kind of a thing. I mean, Aneri was starting the entire speech, entire program, saying that HR is being seen as a cake cutting or maybe some sort of, engagement which is a lighter in the mode. So we have to go beyond that, be it any industry. If we have those skills, let me tell you, my friend, connect to me offline. There will be job. There are jobs. And after 4-5 months, 6 months after, COVID is getting over, you will get more opportunity than earlier. So that's what, Divya, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Santosh. I think you've covered it well. I think I would only like to add just few more points that the world of work is definitely changing. And according to the World Economic Forum, 65% of the children who are in primary school will be employed in jobs that do not exist right now. So that is so. If one kind of jobs will go away, there'll be another kind of jobs which will be created for sure. But I think what is going to continue to stay and will continue to be valued will be the soft skills part which I have mentioned. Your emotional quotient, your networking quotient, your SQ would gain prominence, because I think a lot of things machine will be able to cover up. But what humans specialize, and that's what the soft part is. I think jobs in those areas will gain a lot of prominence. And therefore, I think the transactional part of the HR jobs are going to go away, slowly going to go away. But what is going to remain is more meaningful jobs with respect to consulting, coaching, developing people, the talent management part. I think all of that will continue to remain. So that's my response to that question.
Yeah. So I think we are on the top of the hour. I would want each one of you to give one input to the community that who are listening. What is your view? Anything to do with learning? Anything to do with skilling? Anything to do with being ready for the future and all that stuff? One word or one sentence.
Vishwananda, before we go ahead with this, we have one question from the Facebook Live.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, by Smita Bhatt. The question is posed to Raj around AI. So her question is, isn't it time for functions to move to collaborative analytics? For example, HR and finance for the organization.
Answer is yes. It's not a matter of choice. It's a matter of compulsion. So yes and yes.
Okay, thanks, Raj.
So we'll start with Santosh. One input that you want to share.
I would like to share only one word, basically attitude and, habits. We heard of, KSA, knowledge, skill, and ability. But I feel, attitude and habits, those are going to be the change maker for, of course, for HR fraternity. So that's the very, very important thing.
Super. Divya?
Yeah, so I'd like to say what I received one advice, or what my experience has been, or what I've learned is that whenever you look at your career, look at it like a marathon, not like a sprint run. So the moment you see that it's not short term here and now, but long term. So your whole perspective towards approaching your career will change. So you will go more into understanding depth, gaining knowledge, building relationships, working with integrity, rather than just taking those hasty decisions which will serve you here and now. Because sprint preparation for sprint running is very different from when you prepare for a marathon. So that's what I think that was a great piece of advice which I received from my bosses many years back when I started my career, and that's what I'd like to pass on.
Aditya?
I think this skill which is called cognitive flexibility, I feel that will be a very important skill for people to have. Its ability to basically switch off and then move into doing something else, which will be a very, very important skill for people to have, which a lot of people don't have. It'd be a very critical skill in the future. So that's my wish.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Raj.
I think I just remember this quote of Toffler, who says, illiterate of 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot not unlearn, learn, and relearn. So in that context, I would say be lucky. And luck I define as labor under correct knowledge. So identify a person as a coach or a mentor or guide who can guide you towards your luck, who can tell you where to dig. Because if you dig 100 shallow ponds, you cannot take the oil out. So you need to figure out which is what your coach or guide can tell you where to dig, and then you can dig deep and then get the oil out there. So be lucky is my answer to your question.
I think that's a good one. I like what Aditya mentioned, cognitive flexibility, and Santosh, I think being persistent, and Divya, I think your point actually applies to everyone at every given point in time, not only a specific area, right? So I think I would want to say I think my these were my points which were stolen by Raj, Aditya, and all that stuff. So I had no other points to be discussed to guys. So I think stay home, stay safe, and I'm sure you had a great opportunity to talk to us. I think we had a great time spending time with you. I've learned something today. Honestly, team, I think that's what I will take home. And all the very best. And thanks HR Success team for organizing this one. It came up really well, and they saw a lot of the social notes and all that. I think a lot of Facebook Live is also happening as we speak. It was well organized, and